Hello guys, and welcome to yet another video. This time I decided to take a look at profiling because if you're doing VR development, chances are that you at some point will run into performance issues, and that might happen sooner than later, and it is definitely something that you want to take into consideration pretty early on. So take my advice for it. Don't wait until you're kind of in the middle of the process. You want to plan on these things to begin with. So what I did here was to load up a blank UE4 template and just get a baseline of how things run. So if you run this and you type in like, okay, I want to set up a key for my console. Okay, so if you type in stat unit, that one is quite central. So what you're going to see here is that we have a frame of 11 milliseconds and you have a game thread time of 2.2 milliseconds. So this is the baseline for the Unreal Engine VR template. And you have some draw calls and you have some GPU. I'm not going to go into the draw and the GPU right now, but I know that Robo Recall had some experiences with this and they shared them on some other videos, and so go check those out. I can maybe put a link in the description somewhere if I can find it. So I'm going to focus primarily on the game thread and the frame time up here. And that might actually seem a little bit counterintuitive since these are smaller than the draw and the GPU at the moment. But just note that everything is bound to the frame time of 11 milliseconds. And this is super basic, but if you kind of take 1 second and then divide that by 90, you're gonna get 0.01, and that is where the milliseconds come from. So if you times this by 1000, then you get 11.1, and that is why things have to run in 11 milliseconds. Okay, so what other options do we have? So one other command that I found to be very useful also, that is actually a little bit about the GPU. If you type in stat engine, at the bottom here you can see a number, and it's usually going to be a little bit hard to see, but this is the top number here is actually the triangle count. So if you turn your headset around, you can see that at some points you will have more or less triangles drawing. So you'll see this number 11,000 is going to change somewhat. I believe it's this one at least. So it's a little bit hard to see right now. Skeletal mesh triangle is the top one, and then you have the bottom one is, or second one is static mesh triangles. So it's actually the two top ones that you want to have a close look at. Generally, you can assume to be running about 1 million in total, or 1.5 is what Robo Recall ran with. So if you're not above that, I assume that you're on the safe side. Okay, so let's continue and have a look at the profiler. So the profiler, if we just type in stat none, get rid of everything. So the profiler is actually a way of seeing what is going on for each frame. So it's going to save whatever is happening in your game. So if you type in stat start file, nothing seemingly is going to happen. But if we just do a little bit of random stuff, and note that I'm recording also right now, and I made sure that my settings, I'm going to show that in a moment. are set to encode on the GPU because I want to get a closer look at how the CPU is performing. So once I'm done with this, I'm gonna say stat stop file and then exit. Make sure you type in stat stop file before you exit. So right now I'm recording with OBS, so I'm just gonna bring in the settings from OBS. And under encoding here, I am actually running on the CPU, so I actually need to be on this one. So I'm gonna get a little bit of pollution from that encoding, quite a bit. So anyway, what we're gonna see, we're gonna have a look at it in a moment. We're gonna go to developer tools, and under session front end, gonna find the tab profiler, and you can hit load and go into Unreal Stats, and it's going to make a folder per day per some time. I think I haven't really figured out the exact naming of this, but you can compare this with the time of day and time of 8 o'clock about, and then just open this ustat file. So there's a lot of information in here. I'm not going to go through all of it just because I am still learning how to read this. But if you move your mouse up here and scroll downwards, you're going to see eventually that you're going to see this 11.1 milliseconds that we talked about. And you want to scroll past through this and make sure that this blue graph, which represents a game thread, which is the one that we are very interested in, is going to be pretty much stable. You want to look for spikes or whatever. So everything looks just fine here. And note that it says average 11.145 milliseconds. So if you go to the FPS chart, you're also going to see a chart over how many frames were in 90 seconds and how many were below. You can actually see it drops a little bit below, but as far as I could tell, I didn't have any stutters or anything. So if you get this picture in your game, then this will probably be fine. If you start to have a graph that goes kind of like this, ending about here, you're gonna get eventually some reprojection, and that means that you're gonna drop below or above the 11.1 milliseconds and start to drop frames now and then, and that is what will cause at some point motion sickness, because it's gonna lose frames from time to time. So let's say we had a little, so you can actually select each frame here now, and let's take this little spike here. It's not that much. What you're going to look for, and at the bottom here, I'm not going to use too much time on this one because I haven't figured out what it actually showed me, except that it's a visual presentation of the same that I can find down here, so I prefer this one. Just know that you can hover the mouse here, and I haven't really found any more useful information in here. But if we expand the game thread, and this game thread can be anywhere in here, I haven't figured out exactly what the rest of them are, like task, graph thread, something, blah blah blah. There's a render thread here, which I should also at some point look into. But I'm focusing now on the CPU part, so that is going to be the game thread here. So the frame time, and we have something called frame sync time, which is something that you can generally ignore. This is going to make sure that it adds up to 11.1 milliseconds. So if it goes over 11.1 milliseconds, then this will be higher than 11.1 milliseconds, and that means that your total frame time is going to be 22 or above. So if we drill further down, we're going to see the game thread idle time, and if we go further down, some wait time, we can at this time just ignore this. As you can see, the CPU stall, just ignore this. This is perfectly fine. So what you're really interested in is the frame time here. So if you remember from the stat unit, you saw well, I don't remember exactly, but it was way higher than 0.6 milliseconds. But this frame time is generally what you're looking for, or this world tick time. So this is showing what is happening on this particular frame and how much time you had on your tick. And the frame, the world tick, at least for my case, is what I'm mostly interested in optimizing, because that is happening every time for every frame. So what you also can do here is to drag this up here and drop it, and that will allow you to see how much time do I spend on my world tick at any given time. So here you can see actually what is happening, because you may get spikes in your game thread, but you may not get spikes on your world tick time, and that has to do, generally as far as I have seen for now, to do with garbage collection and some other random things which I haven't figured out yet. So if we go into the tick time, you will see pre-physics and end physics and release group tick. So we go into the pre-physics and this release tick group block. This is actually where the main logic is found. So if you're here you're going to see the ftick function task, which has generally what you think of when you think this is my game tick. So if we just have a look at what is spent in here, you can see it's the motion controller, something is going on with the hand mesh, and we have the player controller. So these are the 5 top items that take time. So here you can actually see it's generally the motion control that takes up the time. So you can also right click this one and say expand selection. And then you can see what particular things in this case it's an actor, is taking up the time. So it looks like it's move component primitive that is generally taking up most of the time, and that it's something to do with overlaps and stuff. So update overlaps. And this is the part that I probably need to look more into, what each of these things mean, because they may be actually quite important to figuring out how you can optimize this any further. So this was a very brief look into the profiler and how you started and how you just started with reading what this tells you. I haven't looked at all this stuff here. I believe it's mainly to do with if you want to run a live profiler. I haven't done that myself yet, so I can't really tell you how it works. If you and it's also worth noting that you can actually run this in a package build, which might be what you want to do eventually. So if you build this in a developer build, I believe, then you can still run this one and grab the profile out of it. And also on the side here, you're going to see a bunch of other things that you can also drag in. You'll also find things like blueprint time, for example. Here you can just drag that in, and let's get rid of that one. So here you can see whatever blueprint time is doing, maybe how much move component primitives are taking, and in this case it's so small that you can't really see it, but it's a good way to see if you have any spikes in particular parts of these areas here. So for my case, for what I'm working on currently, I had some issues with the AI, and I found that the EQS system was giving me some occasional long times where it actually spent up all the way up to 4 milliseconds, which is huge when you have such a small budget. So that actually ended up being something I had to investigate. I haven't solved that one yet, but it's telling me, the profile is telling me that this is an area that I need to look further into. So let's close this one up and try and load up my VR character example. That's the template that I've been working on. And I believe I've shown the most parts of how it works, except that I switch it out with a character instead of a physics capsule, which I believe I showed earlier on. So this consists of a VR pawn, which is the one that I dragged into the scene. And it has a camera and some audio, which I'm just going to turn off. It's just going to be a wind sound. And then the physics constraint, which I use for some rope swinging I have implemented. And then you can see it has quite a fat ass tick here running here. So I definitely want to have a look at if all of this is needed and if there's some parts of this I need to optimize on. On begin play, which is up here, I initialize some standard stuff here, and I initialize my VR character, which is the one that represents the collision with the world. So here you will see that I spawn a VR character, which is this one. And you can see this is actually a standard character, and it has a capsule and a character movement component. So obviously I am gonna have the overhead of some of this stuff running, and I don't have my mesh on here, so I'm not really using that for anything. All I'm using is basically the capsule logic together with the character movement. And that is because I work in blueprints only, so I don't have currently a better way, or haven't found a better way. I know some people have, and I would love to see how they do it. But I know some people have done this all contained within one VR character. So if we have a play with this and do the same again, stat unit, we're gonna see I have a game time of 2-3, and I believe the Unreal Engine game pawn was saying 2.2 or something, so mine is a little bit higher, and that is kind of what I would expect because I have all this stuff running on my VR pawn. On top of that, I actually also have a bunch of other things running. I have some platforms, and I currently don't know how much they take, but nevertheless, let's get rid of that and type it stat. Have a look at how this performs. Okay, so, whoops, got stuck in something. Okay. And just gonna swing around a little bit. Okay. I think that should be plenty to have a test with. So let's type in stat stop file, and we can exit. So I did a profile yesterday as well, so I'm going to load this one from today. And again, while I'm loading this, I like to load up the FPS chart and see how it looks here. So you can see I get quite a few frames that go below 85. And that was kind of the baseline. Everything was safely within the two first top bars here. So I dropped something here, which is a little bit disappointing, I would say, because I don't really have that much running. But anyway, apart from that, it looks pretty okay. My average game time is 11.1 seconds, milliseconds, so that looks pretty okay, I would say. And then again, what I usually do is to scroll through this list and locate my game thread, find my game frame time in here. So you're gonna get game thread, frame time, and then frame time again. And under here you have your world tick time. That's the one that you're mostly interested in. I'm gonna scroll all the way down and then scroll through this one, and I'm gonna see here, for example, there's a huge spike, and so I select that one and then expand or look for the game thread. So here you can see something interesting. You have 19 milliseconds, and if you expand the frame time, you're gonna see that inside here you're gonna hopefully find something interesting. We're still expanding. Yeah, so I have something that takes up a lot of time. It says other task graph stalls. So this is an area that I should be very interested in figuring out the reason for this. This is actually one, I was actually expecting to see something else in here, but it's definitely something I should have a closer look at. So I have another spike over here, which I'm also going to investigate a little bit on. Maybe it's the same. No, actually in this time I will see this GC mark time. So this is, as far as I can read, this is garbage collecting. I have no idea why it's collecting something over here, but it is something that I've seen quite a few times. And this obviously screws up my frame rate. And I have another one over here. It's not that big because you can see I'm below 4 milliseconds, but still it's something I want to look at. So if we expand down here, I can see my in this particular frame my VR pawn is taking up 2.4 milliseconds, which is quite huge. So I'm obviously interested in what part of this is taking so much time. And let's see. It looks like it is something to do with me updating my capsule height, because I update the capsule height on every frame. So in this particular instance, this is taking up a lot of time. I have something subtract vector from vector. Okay, so this one, no, it's actually this one, subtract vector from vector. Apparently that took up 1.9 milliseconds. That is really weird. It looks like a game stutter or something. So to me, this is something I can't really do anything about because I'm on blueprints. So I can go through this graph here and look for things, but actually what is just as more interesting is if I just select, for example, a range here, which looks pretty good, and then expand my game thread again. And then find my world tick time. Then I can see my general world tick time is about 1.5 milliseconds. And if I go a little bit further down to the ftick function task, I can see that my VR pawn and my motion controls are generally taking not too much time. It's not that much really, but obviously they are going to be at the top here because not much else is going on. But if I were to find something that looked more like 2-3 milliseconds in here, then I would be worried, because that would definitely mean that I had to do something about it. So two things to gather from this is that I have some stalls or some spikes here and there, which is something I should, in my particular instance, look further into. And then also I also gathered from this that generally my VR pawn logic seems to work, and it's not causing any trouble when it's just running normally. So actually I have a game thread spike here, it seems. I was just about to say that everything ran fluently, but actually I do have this one. And this might actually be that same weird character component. Yeah, I think it's this one as well. Character non-simulated time perform movement. So what I'm doing is expanding really. It's generally just as easy to just right click and say expand selection. But it looks like it's something in here that stalls. I have no idea. Fast overlap. But it's coming from the VR character, I can see, and it's to do with the movement component. Again, it's maybe not something I can do anything about because I don't control what happens inside the character movement component. But other than that, it looks pretty good to me. I have some weird, it's like there's more action going on up here. I'm not really sure how much I should worry about that. Yeah, and I said this before, the frame sync time here in this case, I generally don't worry about that, except that my frame time goes above 11 milliseconds, which is a little bit weird, because it should be below. If somebody is watching this and can explain why it goes above 11 milliseconds, please let me know, because I think it's a little bit weird. Oh, and again, this frame grab is done while encoding on the CPU as well, so I maybe have been messing up the results. Right, so this is basically what I wanted to share this time here. It's well, it's, you generally want to do this, as I said in the beginning, very early on, and you want to keep profiling non-stop, because you don't want to get any unpleasant surprises later on. And personally, I didn't notice any stutters really myself, but as a developer I may also be more forgiving, because I kind of know what I'm looking for, so I may be missing the fact that my game starts to stutter somewhere, and I may not be stress testing it as much as I could. So yeah, it's definitely something that you want to keep on doing, and you may want to try and destroy the performance also, just to, because other people that may play your game, they will definitely do weird things that you probably didn't think of. So it's a good idea to profile early on and profile aggressively when you do it. So I hope you got something out of this, and please leave comments in the description if you have stuff to add to this. I think we need some more input on profiling in general. It's really big topic, I would say. Oh right, and before I end this video, there's an area which I haven't really looked into, but it has to do with how you tick things, because tick is generally the thing that will be a problem. So if you type in, select your any actor really, and you want to ask yourself, do this actor really need to have tick enabled? So this one start with tick enable. If you don't need tick, in my case I do, but if it's just a box or something which doesn't have any logic, you generally want to uncheck this one. And what you can also ask yourself is what tick group does this need to be in? Normally, or per default, everything lands in the pre-physics group, but you can actually parallelize things a little bit by moving it to the during physics. And as the tooltip says here, any item that can be run in parallel with our physics simulation work. And that means that if you have something that is spawning or don't need collision or physics, then you can basically just move things in here, and then it can run in parallel with the rest of the stuff. And that might actually also save you some time. So these two, I'm going to move this back because I have tons of stuff going on with both collisions and physics. But this start with tick enabled. Make sure that you really need your tick, and if you don't, uncheck that one. And if you have things going on your tick which does not involve collisions or physics, move it to during physics. And that is really something that should help performance as well. I think that's it for this video. So yeah, see you again in the next video.